Hi everyone, this is CricketSong with Lunar Wisdom, and this is a past life reading for my client, Willow. Now when I do these past life readings, it's important to note that whatever past life comes up is not necessarily the most current past life that this person has had. It is what it is it's the most prominent past life that affects the current life that this person is living at this time. So you could have had, 5 past lives, and this is not necessarily the last. Say you're in your 5th life, this is not necessarily the 4th life, but it could be, but it's not necessarily. It could be any of the other lives. Okay. Here are all the cards. So, and they go all the way down here to the bottom. So we're going to start at the beginning, at the top. So let's move the camera so that we can see the top here. Okay. So the first card we see is the Two of Swords. And this particular position in this spread indicates the nature of the soul, of Willow's soul, as she came in to this particular past life. And the Two of Swords indicates that when Willow came into this particular past life, she understood that she was going to have experiences where she either shielded herself from them or she distanced herself from either the people involved or the experience. So she was coming in with a little bit of an understanding that she was going to sort of be an outsider to situations or people. But this was the experience that she was looking to have for whatever, reason. This was what she was coming into, understanding that she was going to feel a little alienated and a little isolated from certain situations and people, not completely. She wasn't going to be a loner, but there were going to be certain situations and certain people that she was going to distance herself from. So that was the nature of her soul as she came in to this particular past life. So then we go to the first card here, and for this first card the second card talks about her environment and the environment that she was born into. And when we talk about the environment, we talk about the people, the places, the culture, the time, the whole environment, the physical environment, and the feeling of what was going on at that particular time. This is the card that we get the most information about, her time on the timeline, on our linear timeline, what was going on. So strength talks about the need for the people, for herself, to be strong. Strong in every sense of the word. Physical strength that was necessary in order to survive, to be physically healthy, be in strong bodies. It was important for her to be spiritually strong, emotionally strong, mental strong, strength to be alert. So this is indicating that the time that she was born into was a time of a lot of strife in the environment. There was a lot of physical danger, and the weak did not survive. So I'm feeling that she was really born into a sort of war or combat type environment where the forces of nature where she was physically residing in was very difficult for her to live, and the people that she was born to, the physical environment was very challenging, as well as the social climate was very combative and conflicting. Okay, the image I'm getting, which I'm not seeing in the cards, but an image that is coming to me, is it was sort of like a war zone is what I'm feeling, that there was a lot of fighting, a lot of combat. Trying to get a feel of the weapons being used. I see some metal, either swords or club type, but they're made of metal. The materials that the people are fighting with are metal. And I'm seeing not just soldier type people, but I'm seeing sort of like common people also using like daggers and blades of some sort. So and the sky is very gray, but I do not see snow. I do see like gray overcast with some like rainy, but not like downpouring rain like we get here, but very overcast. And what I'm seeing is some sort of buildings, but they're made of brick and stone. I'm not really seeing wooden buildings. I'm seeing a lot of brick and stone type buildings, very overcast, gray, dreary, and a lot of fighting, a lot of screaming, and a lot of angst. And I'm actually seeing Willow, although I'm not getting a gender yet, I'm actually seeing Willow being born in one of these buildings that doesn't look like it's being very well maintained. And her mother I'm seeing with a clothing, but she has some sort of like blanket, like a wool type blanket around her. And I don't see a lot of people in attendance. I do see another woman there with her as she's giving birth, but I hear horses' hooves galloping by, and I see, like I said, fighting just on the other side of this this wall where she is being sheltered by. So that's the environment. So time frame, you'll have to take the clues from that and see if you can find out more information. I don't claim to be a history expert. History is really a poor subject for me. I don't know a lot of history, but those are the symbols and the images that I'm getting in order for us to sort of try to place what time and social and country or society that Willow was born into at this time. I still don't have a gender as of yet. So then the next card, the Three of Swords, indicates the environment. Actually, as we look at this card, there's rain in this card. If you see these people in the background walking over the earth, there's rain. There's rain coming down. And when I see the Three of Swords, this really talks about being at a crossroads and a decision needing to be made. Wanting both, but needing to choose one and having a very difficult time choosing. So I really, when I see this card, it talks about sort of, I get the feeling there was some sort of war, some sort of conflict. Whether it was sort of a revolutionary type thing or a civil type war type thing, but there was definitely some sort of conflict. The society wanting their freedom, but also wanting the protection of whatever this opposer or oppressor was coming in, whether they were trying to overthrow or take or what's the other word? Not overthrow or take, but capture or you know, take this other country or this other village or this other society into their own, as part of their own. And I feel like the people that Willow was born into were very conflicted themselves as to whether they should join this other force or environment, or not environment, country or ruler or whatever, to take them into sort of their fold and be part of their, I want to say empire, but I don't feel like it's an empire. You know, do they want the protection and the benefits that would come with being part of this greater force, but they also want the freedom to be on their own and to live in their own way and with their own culture and their own beliefs. So I feel like that Willow was born into a very conflicted environment and very unsettled people. This next card talks about her education. At this point, I get a strong feeling that her gender was female. And her education, she was taught healing arts, I guess is what you could say. She was taught how to heal, how to nurture and heal. It was her place as a female gendered individual, and she was taught how to heal those who were wounded, especially during this conflict. But she was also taught how to heal the individuals from the inside out, not to just address the outside symptoms of what's going on internally, but she was also taught how to heal them and nourish them through medicinal herbal things, and also what she cooked and prepared as food. Food was medicine, and so she was taught how to do this. And it was an important teachings in the culture and people that she was brought into. And I see her standing around a cauldron, or the pot and the hearth, and I see her with her mother, and I see her with another woman, a very much older woman, you know, perhaps the wise woman of her family or the community, and they're all standing around this hearth. Again, very dreary, and at this point it's very dark in the place that she is. And I'm actually seeing it's not a very large place. The hearth is not very large either. It's sort of like a hollowed out section of a wall of this, almost like a cave-like dwelling. And they're feeding the fire, and they're stirring, and they're putting, it looks like rosemary into this pot. And there's murmurs. I can't hear what they're saying, but there is an understanding between the three women that the two, her mother and this older woman, are speaking and teaching her what they're doing. She is very young. I see her as a very young girl. Almost can't even see inside the cauldron. She's so short and petite at this point. So then we go down to the next 3 cards here. And the Hanged Man is in the position of accomplishments. So I'm really feeling like her accomplishments, there weren't many accomplishments. Some past lives I do, there's great accomplishments, like the individual makes a very big impact in the society that they live in, or they were a great warrior, or a great healer, or a great mother, made the accomplishments sometime as children or family, or personal enlightenment. For Willow here, we're seeing that the accomplishment was just to maintain. That in this great time of strife and conflict, it was important to maintain the basic beliefs and ways of her people. And I feel like her being taught to be this healer, this nourisher, you know, this wise one, or the one that she, you know, the arts, the healing arts that she was taught, it was important for them to maintain these teachings, to carry through. And I feel like for Willow, it was important for her not only just to have survived as long as she did, but to be able to maintain these beliefs and carry them to the next generation. And this was a very great accomplishment during this time of sort of takeover and conflict and strife. Her occupation, I do feel like at this point she was, her occupation was a healer. She was not only taught the healing arts, but she maintained this. She kept them, just as her accomplishment was to carry it through. That was her occupation. She was one who counseled, who nourished, who nurtured, who healed. Not only, again, all of her people, but there was a special attachment to children and young ones. She did teach these ways to the younger generation of women, young girls who were born and were able to survive the very difficult birth and growing up. I do feel like it was those females and those babies who were born during this time were very few to her people. And those that survived, the females, were sent to her as soon as she was able to teach, and she taught them. She passed on the ways of her people, and she was certainly acknowledged and recognized for these things that she did. Which brings us to her social status. Her social status, I don't see currency in her people as in money currency, although I'm feeling like I am aware that there is coins and that sort of currency. For her, her social status surrounded surrounded her occupation. It was important for her people to have her, because I do see the older woman dying, and I actually see her mother dying as well. And her being one of the few educated women in these healing arts gave her a social standing within her people, within her community, her culture, as someone who was, looked to for leadership. I don't see her making a lot of choices, but the fact that if she disagreed with whatever was in her people, because I actually do see the opposing force that we saw at the very beginning of her life experience, they do take over her people into their I want to say empire, but I'm not feeling like empire is the correct word to use here. But I do see the larger force taking over her people, and they becoming part of this larger, I'm going to say empire, but again, I don't feel like it's an empire. It could be, but it is a very large influential force. And I see them swallowing up her people. So I don't feel like she has say in the greater sense of the force that took them over, but I feel that she has some say in her small community, that they look to her for wisdom, not only in the healing arts, but just because they see her as a wise one. And because she heals and nourishes from inside, she has an understanding of the perspective of what the greater beliefs or the greater society that swallowed them up, how it would influence them internally, spiritually, emotionally, and how these things would manifest in the physical symptoms of their life. I do feel that because she carries this wisdom and this understanding, that this is one of those situations that sort of isolated her from the rest of the people. It puts her in a perspective, and I sort of see a sense of divination here, that she could see the outcome of many of the decisions that were being made by her people. And many of these outcomes that she could foresee made her feel very uncomfortable. So as much as she was part of the community, she was also separate from them, because she had this greater perspective and greater understanding and greater knowledge. So this isolated her in some ways. So then we're going to look to these three cards here. This first card talks about her relationships. And I feel that she was someone who had many relationships, but understand that when we talk about relationships, we're not just talking about romance. We're talking about relationships with other people. We're talking about, family and friends and coworkers, spiritual relationships, emotional relationships, physical relationships, in whatever sense that we have interpersonal interaction with other human beings. And I feel like she had many relationships that people, because they looked to her because who she was in their community, they did look to her and connect with her. I do feel like she did have a romance, but I feel like it was very fleeting. I feel like because of, again, her perspective, when she met people and interacted with people, she could already have a greater understanding of where this relationship might go. And when she got this feel or this read or this understanding from the person, she would immediately make judgments as to whether she would reveal her inner self or be intimate with them, or whether it was more of a sort of like business-like relationship. And like I said, I do see her with one man, a dark-haired man, although they are very young at the time that they meet. And she reveals some of herself to him, but what she tells him and how she speaks with him, it really, instead of bringing them closer, he feels, which she is hoping will happen, he feels very unworthy of her attention and unworthy of her time, because he recognizes in her what knowledge and wisdom she carries, and he does not feel that he is able to take on this great responsibility that she has within their community, and he doesn't feel worthy. So their relationship is fleeting. It is very intimate for a very short time, but very, very fleeting. I do not see her with her own children. I see her taking care of the children in their community or their tribe or their her people, but I don't see her with her own children, although I don't see her really upset by this either. It's not that she cannot have children. I do see her going through her cycles so that she is able to have children. I just don't see that manifesting. Her family life, again, the attention, the time, and the energy that she has spent on taking care of and maintaining her people is a lot of time and energy and effort. And I do see her people maintaining. I don't see her people disappearing. So even though she's not having children, there are other women in this small community that have children. Although I do see the numbers in her tribe or in her community, once they are taken over by this greater people, this greater empire, I feel as if her numbers of her people dwindle, because I feel like there is a mix going on, sort of her people and this greater people. Some of her people are falling in love and having relationships with this greater people. So her line, her heritage, the people who stayed in this community, the numbers have dwindled greatly. But I do see a handful of her people still maintaining their customs and their beliefs while they are part of this greater whole, although it's the greater whole is sort of integrating with her people. But she is doing her best to maintain, to carry through this, and I see her doing that. This last card is her death. How is it she died in this particular incarnation? And I do feel like a lot of the anxieties and a lot of the stress and a lot of the energy that she is putting into what she is doing is what ultimately ended her life. I see that when she does die, she does have a protege or an apprentice, and I do feel like at her death, this person was attending her. I feel like she might have been overcome by illness, and she did die in her sleep. I feel like her death wasn't as peaceful, and she died with a lot of worries and concerns on her mind and on her spirit, and she was conflicted. So her death was very much in a very conflicted state, as was her birth. We talk about how I talked about how her birth, she came into an environment that was, there was war and there was strife. And I feel like in her death, internally, she felt like there was war and strife, and that she was concerned about her people maintaining as being a part of the greater whole. I feel like she had confidence in her protege as this woman is sitting by her bedside, putting cool compresses on her forehead. I feel like there was fever. I feel like that as Willow died, she was speaking of what she saw on the spirit realm. She was having visions or hallucinations, depending on how you want to view that. And she was speaking to her protege of what she was seeing and her concerns. She had confidence, but again, there was a greater understanding that this greater empire that had overtaken her people, there was concern that they would ultimately be lost, that their culture and their beliefs would be lost without her. So then we look to the last 4 cards. These first 2 cards talk about lessons learned during this past life, and these 2 cards talk about how this past life affects her current incarnation. So her lessons learned. The 2 of Chalices talks about promises and vows, and she understood that once she made a vow or a promise to herself, that it was something that she could carry through. She learned this in this particular past life. So this sort of hints to me that in her other incarnations, she didn't really understand that words were vows, and that perhaps in previous lives she had a very difficult time keeping her promises and vows. And in this particular past life, when she took her vow or her promise, which I really feel like occurred during her teaching time up here when she was taught these healing arts, she took a vow and a promise that she would undertake this and carry this through. And in this particular past life, that's what she did. So she learned that. The 7 of Swords talks about how these promises and these vows do really drain you, and you really give your all, the essence of who you are into these promises, and how much it takes for her to maintain and honor these. So she definitely learned this in this particular past life, that even though it's a positive thing, it can be very draining energetically, emotionally, and physically when you dedicate your life to such things. So she learned that. How this particular past life affects her current incarnation. The 5 of Chalices talks about the things that really fulfill us can still carry disappointments, and that our expectations may not be fulfilled, and that may bring some sadness and sorrow to us. So that this particular past life affects her in that way, meaning that in this current life, she carries over certain beliefs from this previous life. And even though they do bring her happiness, there are still things that do not meet her expectations, whether they are experiences or people. And herself having such vows that when she makes a promise, when she puts all her energy into something, it sort of gives her high expectations that other people will meet, and they don't. And that's sort of how it affects it, that she expects great things from people, and sometimes they can't live up to the expectations she has set forward, and that's where she gets disappointed. And the 7 of Chalices talks about choices and opportunities that really bring her fulfillment. So we're seeing here that this current life that she's living is really affected emotionally, spiritually, emotionally, spiritually, and mentally by this particular past life. That things that fill her from the inside are what brings her the greatest joy, and where she has a lot of opportunities and choices, that every cup will fulfill her, but they will do so in a different way. That every choice that she has set before her, whether it's choosing what religion or spiritual path she should follow, or if she's going to learn a healing modality in this particular life, that no matter what healing modality she learns or what spiritual path she follows, each of them will bring her fulfillment, because she's looking in this particular incarnation for fulfillment from the non-physical and not the physical. So this particular life, she is not very connected to physical possessions and physical things. She looks more to spiritual and emotional things to fulfill her. So this is Willow's past life reading. Willow, if you have any questions or need clarification on anything that I read, please feel free to contact me. Anyone else watching this particular past life reading, if you're interested in receiving your own, you can visit my website at www.lunarwisdom.net and find out how you can receive your own past life reading from me, Cricket Song. And as always, I love you.